Using all the skills that we've learned so far, we're going to build a mini project, and it is a simple number guessing game. So how it's we're going to build it, basically it's going to be a command line game where the user has to guess a random number between, let's say, 1 and 10, and the program is going to give the user hints whether the number they're guessing is too high or it's too low, until they get the right number that they are supposed to get for them to win the game. So we're going to build the game. We're going to understand exactly what everything is. We're going to introduce a few more new concepts to this. So again, take your books out and write some notes. So the first thing that I'm going to do, I've already created a file here. I call this file number underscore game.py. And the first thing we need to do is we're going to import a module. So to basically understand what a module is, a module, think of it as a bundled up version of a certain functionality. So this is a functionality that you can ideally basically implement everything on your own, but it's going to be a lot more code that you don't really have to do because there's someone who has already built a library for that. So how you import a module, we just use the import keyword like that. Then you mention the module that you're importing. So in this case, we're importing random. Right? So random is a module that has been created. So this is a functionality. Think of it as a functionality that someone else has implemented that we don't have to implement also. So all we need to do is just import it so that we can be able to reuse it in our program. So that is what that we import this, and what this random does, it's going to help us generate random numbers. We're going to need these random numbers. Again, remember, it's a number guessing game. So we're going to use it to think of a number. So we're going to see how this works in a moment. Then the next thing that we need to do is we need to generate the secret number now using this random module that we just imported. So we're going to declare a variable here, and we're going to call this variable secret number. Then using random, so how you use random has a number of other methods that are embedded into it, or let's call them functionalities. Then you just say random dot rand int. So as you've already guessed, rand int stands for random integer, and as you can see here, even from the suggestions that we have, it says random integer in the range AB, including both endpoints. So we need to basically specify the range that we want. So to specify a range, you use the parentheses, then you specify. Again, remember, we want to guess of a number between 1 and 10, right? So when you say random.randint, it's going to randomly guess any number between this range, and it's going to return that number. So this is the number that now the player has to guess in our game. But again, just as a note on the number that it's returning, this rand int, it returns a random number from A to B inclusive of these values. So it's not like any number, just like 2 all the way to 8, but it's inclusive of 1 and 8. So the next thing we need to do from here is we need to set up a counter for a number of guesses that needs to be done. So we're going to call this variable here. I'll declare the variable, and we're going to call it attempts. So at first, we're going to initialize the number of attempts to 0, and we're going to use this now to track how many times a player is going to guess numbers. So as you saw even in the previous lesson, we were trying to, for example, the counter, right? So when you want to count the number of times something has happened, you have to initialize the counter first. So that is the same thing that we're doing here, but we're now initializing the number of attempts. So at every attempt that a user is going to make, we're going to log that attempt and update the number of attempts that the user has made. The other step that we're going to take, which is step 4, is displaying now the introduction to the game. So this is, again, you're free to customize this to your own way. So you can say welcome to the, let's call it guess the number game. So we're going to call this U should be lowercase. So we'll tell them welcome to guess the number game. Then we're going to also give them another statement here. You can make this a multi-line string, by the way, but I'm just going to do it like this. Then as the game, we're going to tell them, we're going to tell the player that I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 10. So that way a user or the player has an idea of what they're getting themselves into. So here again, you can feel free to customize the messages to your liking. But all you need to do is just give it a sort of a friendly vibe for someone to play the game. You can also add some emojis to it, add some colors. The number of these things that you can be able to do here. The next step is now to start the guessing loop. Remember, a user has to make a number of attempts before they get it right. So for us to be able to do that, we need to use a while loop in this case. So we've seen a number of cases on how we can use a while loop. One of the tasks that I gave you is, for example, in the calculator, right? So you need a user to be able to do calculations every time without exiting out of the calculations. A while loop can be able to do that. If you haven't handled that, feel free to just go back and see how you can apply it. But for us to start the guessing loop, we're going to use our while loop. So we're going to just say while true, like that. We're going to just say while true. And in this case, a while true loop is going to keep running until we break out of the loop. Again, remember the while loop has a possibility of running endlessly, but you also have the ability to break out of the loop. So we've talked about the break and continue keywords, but you can be able to do that. But this is perfect for such a game because this game has an unknown ending time. So there's an unknown number of times that a user has to play it before it ends. The other thing we'll do from here is get the player input now, because now the condition is true. We need the player to guess a number. So I'm going to just use guess as the variable, and we're going to use input function. Then we'll tell a player here to enter their guess. So let's say enter your guess. So the input function is going to read the input from the user. We're going to need to validate this and convert it to an integer later on. So the other thing we need to do first is validate this. So when you're doing validation is basically just setting up some rules to make sure that you have the right input and the right statements that you want input rather that you want from your players. So to do that, we're going to use a simple if statement. So we'll just say if not guess. So we'll just say if not guess. Remember, guess is the input that we're getting from the user. Dot is digit. So we're just trying to make sure that what we're getting from a user is a digit. So if not digit, we're going to print a simple statement, and in this statement we'll say something like, please enter a number. So again, note that this is when a user has entered something else that is not considered a number. So for example, they just typed in a random string. A check like this is really important to help us in such a program. So the other thing that we do from in this case is, remember we talked about the break and the continue keywords. We mentioned that the continue keyword helps, or rather skips that iteration and continues with the program. So that is the same case we need to do here. So we need to use the continue keyword. And why we're using the continue keyword here is because in this iteration, or rather in the iteration that is happening here, this is a condition that they're checking, right? So if that condition is met, in this case, if the input that a user gave us was a digit, then we're going to just continue. So we're not going to sort of like break out of the loop and the likes. So this also helps us avoid value error in case someone types in a string like you've mentioned, and its digit is going to just check if all the characters that the user has entered are numeric characters. Now, after this is where we go ahead and convert. Once we've confirmed that what you've gotten is a digit, then we can convert now that digit to an integer. So going to, again, we just update the value of guess, and it's going to be the variable guess at the beginning, they're converting to an integer. Now, I'm sure the question that you're asking yourself is, why didn't we do this, or didn't just do it in line 11? The reason we didn't do it is because we needed to add some validation first, make sure that we're getting the right, or rather getting a digit, right? So that we can avoid any more errors that might come up. So that's what we're doing here. And the reason why we are having this variable here as guess as well is, remember, assignment in Python happens from left to right. So this is what gets executed first before we get to this. So what that means is we are picking the guess from this point. then we bring it here, we convert it to an integer, then we update that value of guess. So we're basically doing reassignment here. So the other thing that we need to do at this point is, after we have now confirmed that it's an integer, we need to increment the number of attempts. Remember, we initialized the attempts at the beginning to 0. So we need to go ahead and increase the number of attempts, or rather update the number of attempts in case the user doesn't get it right at this point. So we're going to just say attempts, and should be TS. Then we'll use plus equal to 1. This is going to increase the attempts by 1. Again, we've discussed what this does before, but if you have a question, type, let me know below. I'll answer it. Once you've done this, the other step for us is to try and compare basically the guess that we're getting from the user. We need to compare it with the secret number. But before we get to that, if you try to run this program now, just do Python 3 number guess game.py. It asks us to enter our guess. So if I type in something like hello as the guess, you see it tells me to please enter a number. The reason why it's doing this is because of this if statement that we have here. This is a validation check that we're doing from line 12 to line 14 that allows us, it does not break out of the loop and tell us we have an error. It just tells us to enter the right thing. So if I put in something like 34, then I do that, and then it tells me this is my guess. But as you can notice now, it keeps on asking me for my guess. I do 34 again, any other number, it keeps on asking me for a guess, right? So this is what we need to update next, or rather fix. We need to get, once you've gotten this guess, we need to compare this guess with the number that this random integer has, or the random function, random module has guessed between 1 and 10. So that's secret number. We need to do that comparison. Now we're going to do the comparison right here. We use a simple if statement. So we're comparing the guess with, again, we're comparing the equivalent. So we use a double equal sign. So guess with secret number. So if you compare guess with secret number, we can do that. So if the guess is equivalent to the secret number, we're going to print a simple statement. And in this statement, we're going to say something like, tell the user that what they've guessed is correct, maybe. And we tell them they guessed the right number. So you tell them you guessed it, let's say you guessed it in, we tell them the number of attempts. So attempts. So in that many tries. Once this is done, so if this condition is met, then you can comfortably break out of the loop. But as you know, if this condition is not met, then we need another condition. This is where an elif comes in. But before we even type in the elif, I'd like us to, I'm going to just run this program one more time to see the output that we get. So if we run this, it says, I'm thinking of a number. Let's say I give them 34. Then it keeps on telling me to guess. Now let's say I give it 1. I give it 1, it tells me to keep on guessing. 2, keep on guessing. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, okay, actually the number was 7. So that meant actually it was 6. So when I entered 6, it exited out of the loop and told me, correct, you guessed it in 7 tries. The reason why it terminated me immediately is because of this break keyword. So whenever you get it right, it terminates there. But at a point in time where that is not the case, or that condition is not met, we need an elif. So in an elif, we're going to just check the guess. So if the guess is, for example, less than the secret number, secret number. Remember what you mentioned about this program. It's going to tell you to help the player to know whether they are guessing the right number or not. It will tell them whether the number they've guessed is less than the secret number, or greater than the secret number. That way they're able to reduce the number of guesses they need to do by about half at every iteration. So we're going to print a statement here, and you're going to tell the user the number they've guessed is too low. They need to try again. So too low. Okay, I should just do this, then tell them try again. So this is a case where the number is less. So else, this means that the number that the user has guessed is high, is higher than the secret number. we'll print a statement to tell the user that the number that they've guessed is too high. Maybe just tell them too high, should be high here, too high, and you tell them to try again. Okay, now let's try to run this program again. I'm going to clear this. So if you run, it tells us guess a number. Let's say I do 45. It tells me it is too high. I need to try again. So let's say again, we know the range is between 1 and 10. I'm just doing this as a guess. So if you do 10, it tells it's too high again. If I do 4, it tells me 4 is too high. That means any number the number that it has guessed is less than 4. So let me try 3, and then let me try 2. Let me try 1. Okay, the number that that it was guessing, or that it was thinking of, is 1. So you can see how this game plays out. Yeah, so that is basically it on how you can build a simple number guessing game using all the skills that you've learned up to this point. From how to declare a variable, how to use write all the expressions in Python, using a while loop, using the input function, if statements, and using the break and continue keywords, which we've just learned in the previous session. The only new thing that we've introduced here is how to import a module. So these are how you import a module. So if you're in case you're wondering where this module comes from, this module is already inbuilt in Python. So the moment you install Python in your machine, this was it comes with that. That's why you're able to just import it like that. It doesn't come out of thin air. I just feel that I need to mention that. So if you've understood up to this point, that's great. Feel free to ask any questions or any clarification if you get stuck. But I'd challenge you to pause and try this again. Try to run it, write the code, and build the game in your own time. Rather, like without watching this, and see how much progress that you can make, and also enhance the game even further. So, yeah, thank you. I hope you've been able to learn everything at this point and try to build up a lot more games. But that's going to be it for this lesson. I'll see you on the next one. Remember to like and subscribe and get the notification on so that you can be notified every time I post these courses. But again, I post one video in the morning, another in the evening, and two videos every day. So cheers.